Luz very fair auditorium. There's a parallel session going on in A1, which is Grete Fritz Kittelsen auditorium. So now we are ready to listen and see the presentation of Ysabela Louise Ariem Ramirez and her diploma thesis that she presents with the title Panibagon Baha'i, Revitalizing Filipino Architectural Traditions Through Affordable Housing, inspired by Baha'i Kubo and Baha'i Nobato. So, welcome.
Hi, yes. There we go.
Ang cute! Tabaching-ching! Go, Ta!
Hello, my name is Ysabela. My project is called Panibagong Bahay, Revitalizing Filipino Architectural Traditions Through Affordable Housing, inspired by Bahay Kubo and Bahay Nabato. So my research is about what can we learn from traditional Filipino housing typologies, specifically the Bahay Kubo and Bahay Nabato, that can be applied to designing affordable housing solutions to address the current housing crisis in the Philippines, while preserving the beauty and simplicity of Filipino cultural heritage. This question guides my research and anchors Panibagong Bahay's vision, which seeks to blend cultural heritage with modern resilience. So, the summary of my abstract. This architectural project focuses on documenting the traditional Filipino housing typologies of the Bahay Kubo and Bahay Nabato through a comprehensive book. The book combines photographs, narratives, and drawings to explore construction methods, materials, and techniques, emphasizing preserving those at risk of being forgotten. It aims to preserve the Philippines' architectural heritage and inspire contemporary, sustainable housing solutions, particularly for climate-vulnerable communities. The project serves as an educational resource to promote identity-rooted, sustainable home design for future generations, aligning with a few organizations that addresses these housing challenges as well. So these are the typologies that we'll be looking at today. Bahay Kubo, which is Nipahat. Bahay is a Tagalog word for house. Kubo is cube. And on the other side, we have Bahay Nabato, which is the colonial era. Bahay, again, house. Bato is stone. So the background of the project. Growing up, summers at our ancestral home in Nueva Ecija left a lasting impression on me. This Bahay Nabato inspired house was a hub for family gatherings. Its design, adapted to the tropical climate, stood as symbol of practicality and cultural identity. However, over time, our family faced challenges posed by climate change. Flooding became a recurring issue, forcing us to question the home's resilience. This personal connection to traditional Filipino homes inspired my quest to explore how these structures can adapt to today's needs while preserving their beauty and significance, taking inspiration from where I grew up to where I am now. So, the Philippines. It is highlighted, this is the red area. It is located in southeast part of Asia. It has 7,000 islands, categorized into 3 primary regions: Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The capital is Manila. The Philippines, with population over 119 million, ranks as the 13th most populated nation globally. A nation abundant with agricultural and marine resources, shaped by its islands. It boasts a vibrant history where festivals, families, unities, simplicity, togetherness are deeply cherished. However, there are 2 main disasters that the country is facing. In these statistics, we can see that flooding and earthquake comes on top. Flooding in the Philippines is a recurring issue caused by frequent typhoons, heavy rainfalls, and rising sea levels. These factors often result in widespread damage, displacement of families, and disruptions of livelihoods, emphasizing the need for resilient housing. Earthquake. The Philippines, situated along the Pacific Ring of Fire, is highly vulnerable to frequent earthquakes caused by 5 major fault lines, making earthquake one of the country's primarily natural hazards. These will therefore be the calamities that I chose to focus on in the project. Another topic is the housing challenges. Urbanization exaggerates these problems. Informal settlements, which house nearly half of the population in major cities, often lack proper sanitation, disaster preparedness, and safety, which also cause the expansion of squatter areas with improper housings, as well as endangered tradition. At some time, modernization has led to the decline of traditional housing, erasing a crucial part of our cultural identity. And some families, like mine, are forced to abandon their homes due to the harsh climate and the consequence of their geographic location, leaving houses unoccupied and vulnerable. And the last background of the project is the lack of documentation. While there are some documentation exists of these traditional typologies, there is a significant gap in detailed records of their construction processes and techniques, hindering a full understanding and preservation of these methods. So just to give you a context of the Filipino housing today, this is a picture of Manila. One of the most typical housing today is a bungalow, which is inspired by after the American colonization, and we have subdivision housings, modern homes, and condominiums. These housing typologies lack the traditional touch and are largely inaccessible to most Filipinos, primarily due to affordability. Therefore, I began exploring alternative solutions for more affordable housing, drawing inspiration from traditional housing designs like Bahay Kubo and Bahay Kubo. Now, studying Bahay Kubo. Bahay Kubo is a cube-shaped one-room house on stilts with wide eaves, a high roof, and a bamboo structure, often trimmed with dried palm or grass. It represents the earliest form of housing in the Philippines, and these type of typologies are often situated in rural areas. The Bahay Kubo has regional variations across the Philippines, shaped by geography, materials, and local needs. This is one example, the Bontoc House, which is located in the mountains. This is Ivagan House, which is located up north in the Philippines, where it's mostly hit by the typhoons, therefore it is made with snow. This is the most typical Bahay Kubo. And there's also a variation of which it stands on water on stilts for the fishermen. By farms, because it's mostly, Philippines is very rich with agricultural resources, and in the mountains. And so bayanihan, community bond. Filipino culture is deeply rooted in bayanihan, a concept of community and mutual support, especially during adversity. It reflects the generosity, resilience, and empathy of Filipinos, fostering a sense of shared responsibility where no one faced hardships alone. So this is an early drawing of a typical Bahay Kubo of an elevation and a section, and this is an example of a much more modern version of Bahay Kubo. So for the design concept, there are 3 main concepts. It is elevated on stilts for flooding and protection from wild animals, steep roof and wide eaves for protection from sun and rain along with better air circulation, and open light wooden structure allows for natural ventilation. The simplicity of Bahay Kubo lies in its multifunctional spaces.
Napapabilis yung kain ko, Papa. Ito, madami ko lang. I mean, kalahasin.
Such as living area, bottom.
Naku nga, walang kanin. Walang ulam, may kanin lang.
And sleeping space depending.
Naubos mo yung 1 kilong kanin.
Bathrooms and
Yeah,
kitchens are
ayun nga.
usually attached and are located by a water well. These are the materials
Ang
that
ganda ng panood ko kahit kanina.
are being used in making a bahay kubo. In the roof, we have nipa
Parang
grass and
totoo talaga,
coconut
no?
grass.
Yeah.
For the main structure, such as walls and floors, we have bamboo and cocoa lumber. And to tie it all together, they usually use abaca fiber or manila rope. Building techniques. As said earlier, there were lack of documentations of how the bahay kubo was connected. Therefore, when I studied, I looked at drawings and pictures to study these, and these are the results of those studies. At first, I looked upon bamboo. Bamboo is a available material in the Philippines. Therefore, it is the material that is mostly used by building bahay kubo. It's very important to study the cuts and how it is being used, and the joints as well. How it's done. So these are the different
Hindi yan masyado nakakita ng bamboo eh.
layering of the nipa grass,
Oo.
and this is how the roof is being made by either grass, the dried nipa grass or pecan grass, and the floor and the foundation. So all of these I studied in models as well to see and work with the materials of flashing and bamboo, and as long as 3D model to have a better comprehension of how they are being
Yung
made
galing dun, oh.
and stumbled upon each other.
Uy, yes!
And this is the result of that study, where I tried to be as true as the technique as possible, where I weave the walls and layered the roof and worked with bamboo.
May bilib na naman tong nangodi
And
ko.
now going to bahay na bato.
Ang galing ni Botes.
Bahay kubo's simple structure was vulnerable to natural calamities in the Philippines. When the Spaniard colonized the country, they saw an opportunity to create a more resilient design, leading to the invention of bahay na bato. Bahay na bato blends European and Southeast Asian cultural styles. Stone or brick walls provide durability against natural disasters, while the wooden upper structure ensures ventilation for a tropical climate. Emerging during the Spanish colonial era, the bahay kubo symbolized wealth and social status, showcasing Filipino elites' association with the colonial authority. So these are the different parts of bahay kubo. We have the living room,
Ang dami na.
seating area, and the staircase, the main staircase.
Pipilaan siya ko. Kumain.
And balconies. So there are two different styles of bahay na bato. The first one is geometric. It's mostly with symmetrical windows and often framed with capis shells made out of oysters and geometric patterns like spirals and diamonds. And the other style is the traditional style called floral. It's effective and intricate carvings, paintings, and woodwork with floral motifs, often inspired by native Philippines flowers. To sum up, the bahay kubo is a fusion of European and Filipino design, with a focus on ventilation and circulation for better airflow to accommodate the tropical climate of the Philippines, which they adjusted in exterior walls and in interior walls as well. The first floor of the bahay na bato is made out of solid concrete or stone walls to elevate the light wooden structure, while the second floor is the light wooden structure with focus on ventilation, where the main program of the house is located. And these are the materials that are used in foundation, in the roof, they use clay, and in the main living area, this is the capis window made out of oyster shells. They also use stained glass and narrowwood. Narrowwood is the strongest wood the Philippines has, so that was the most common wood that's available.
Very expensive yun, ha? Hindi lahat mapwedeng magnara. Sabay naman yung elite yung mga
Panibagong
babato.
bahay. Panibago means new or adopted. Bahay is house. So, summary from each typology. Bahay kubo is mostly about simplicity, functionality, and sustainability, whilst bahay na bato is elegant design, durability, and climate adaptability.
Nalito ng konti si
So,
Sexy dun ah.
the analysis of current issues that needs improvement. First, needs structural durability, disaster preparedness for flooding and earthquake, adaptability for urban context, and accessibility and scalability. So, what are we taking from Bahay Kubo? Materials such as bamboo, nipa grass, lightweight structural elements, and elevated design highlights the simplicity and resilience of naturally sourced resources. The use of these materials reflects a practicality and sustainable approach to construction. And what are we taking from Bahay Bato? The ground floor's solid structure. Crafted from stone, bricks, and concrete, ensures durability and resilience. Complementing this are the capital shell windows made from oysters wish to take further into the suggestion for the future design, the Panibagong Bahay. The Panibagong Bahay is my proposal for the new Filipino housing typology. It combines the spatial efficiency and environmental harmony of the Bahay Kubo with the structural durability of Bahay na Bato. This design integrates modern materials like treated
Ginagamitan tayo ni Tata ng mga terminology ah.
Big words.
disaster resilience. Elevated foundations protect against flooding, while the open layout maintains a communal spirit central to Filipino living.
Oh, diba?
So, the design concept, concrete footing embedded with steel
Pa,
timber
kamingay.
connectors with solid foundation.
Kaya mo kung huwag ka manguna.
Nay, sabi ko na di siya lumayo sa kultura.
Structure. This looks like, and also I wanted it for the reason for the steel timber connection was for it to be detachable and mobile, availability to be mobile, a design concept that enables structure to be detached from its concrete footing and relocated as needed. Floor plan design strategy. A column structure with 1.5 spacing to stabilize the building. The ground floor houses the outdoor kitchen, dining area, storage, and bathroom with all wet zones located here. The second floor design is the lightweight structure of bamboo or timber. This area is mostly private, where the living room and sleeping quarters are designed to be flexible and adaptable to needs of each family, inspired by the multifunctional layout of Bahay Kubo.
Yung sala na
This is
natulugan.
vertical section and horizontal section that also shows the balcony. So these are the materials that I was thinking of using for the new design. Here for the foundation, I would implement concrete and the stainless timber construction, and for the frame, we have bamboo and nara wood. And for the main house, we would still continue with bamboo and nara with the introduction also from the capital shell from Bahay na Bato. And for the wood, for the roof, we have the nipa grass, the bamboo for framing, and a suggestion for metal sheet roof. So it was very important for upon studying the building techniques, what needs to be improved. So to improve the house's ability to withstand flooding and earthquakes, I have studied various foundation types for future designs. The key principle is to elevate the wooden structure off the ground to prevent moisture contact. Building techniques. Reducing column spacing and incorporating bracing support is also crucial for improving the Bahay Kubo design. And I've tried to implement these learnings through model making as well, scaling up the size of Bahay Kubo. So the design suggestion 1, it's a adaptive hybrid structure. This design combines wood and concrete for versatile relocatable ground floor, concrete or stone walls elevate the wooden upper structure, protecting it from moisture and flooding. A nipa grass roof adds cultural authenticity while
Authenticity.
enhancing ventilation and
Teka,
temperature
wala pala.
regulation. The hybrid design balances
I forgive you, Ta.
flexibility and environmental adoption.
Maliit na
Design
bagay.
number 2 is a semi-open robust design. It's inspired by Bahay na Bato. This design features the partially open ground floor with solid walls and one-sided mix of concrete footing and wooden posts. The roof uses lightweight, cost-effective metal sheets. So this is the more effective, affordable suggestion. So in conclusion, Panibagong Bahay envisions a future where Filipino homes are affordable and sustainable, culturally yet rooted yet modern, resilient to climate changes. This vision is not just about building homes, it's about empowering communities to preserve their identity and thrive despite adversity. So in conclusion, the Panibagong Bahay project demonstrates a transformative power of blending tradition with innovation. By learning the Philippines' architectural past, we can create housing solutions that are not only functional, but also deeply connected in a cultural identity.
Bumawi siya.
Spread the word.
Kami-spread ni Ate Tat.
Book, you say yourself at the start you wanted to make a book,
Yeah.
and it was a really engaging read. You know, the thoughtfulness, the seriousness, but also the accessibility for someone on the outside to sort of understand and guide us through in a brilliant way. And also just in terms of the text, it's very well written. A text is a bit like designing a building. You have different scales. You have a 1 to 200 general arrangement, the strategy. You have the kind of, you know, and the narrative works really well. You have the 1 to 50, and then you have right down to the 1 to 5 detailing, and your words are very precise and clear. So it made it a nice, almost kind of a Norwegian way of writing English in a good sense. It's clear, precise, understandable, lots of complex issues condensed without being sensational or sort of, you know, and it was tied together really nicely in the texts.
I agree with you.
I mean, this issue of language then is key to the project, and this kind of cross-cultural hybridity and languages kind of evolving from each other. And this was fascinating, this story you tell of the two main typologies, and then your proposal, this kind of synergy of the two.
Word?
You know, and the one, it's interesting, we've talked about language previously this morning with existing buildings and vernacular buildings. This is a process that maybe it's sort of in the postmodern era we've just come out of. Kind of Charles Jenks' language of modern architecture is not something people like to sort of say they have on their shelves. Maybe they do again now. The language is a way of understanding all buildings, not just existing but new buildings. And what I like is how you take maybe the two aspects of language. It's communication, it can transfer, and this second typology of the three, where it has the combined of the local and then the inputs from the Spanish is fascinating, and it has the practical uses obviously with the climate resilience, which is maybe why it was adapted to, not just culturally, but also to the, you know, even the Spanish, like the Spanish language is a hybridity of kind of Roman, Latin, Renaissance ideals, and then there's a symmetry, and then the way you're layering and dealing with air, you know, there's a sort of Arabic influence in certain aspects of environmental control in Spanish architecture, which I can kind of read with this ventilator, which you didn't talk about so much here, but in the document, and you had so much, I can see you had to cut down and condense it.
Yes.
So this idea of a kind of a language that flows is interesting. But then also too, this section on joints I really enjoyed. The other aspect of language is like evolution. Even some cultures meet, some cultures evolve separately. But every language has verbs, nouns, adjectives, and especially with frame buildings, you know, that your discussion of this catalogue, you know, there's this famous book on Japanese joints, there's all this kind of fascination of Norwegian style and laughed. Quite different cultures, but this points to a kind of timeless way of building, and I like how you've explored the construction, and it's all very sort of concise, but very far out in terms of understanding the construction and the logic, and then you, without making too big a discussion about identity, you take the practical way of life is mixed into it. The drawings, some of them at first impression you kind of think they're quite simple, but I think that's maybe a strength because you're just going down to the essence of it, and then you could almost build from these. You could have especially some of the ones showing the construction drawings in kind of AXO. You can imagine, and that's a bit how people used to build before. Architects and builders had more of a common language. You would just draw the elevation and write brick and this, and there was a kind of shared language, whereas the worst of the construction industry now, the drawing is a kind of contract document with the complexity. So this was something which is, a kind of simplicity but a strength at the same time, which I like to
Parang si ate tatay yung project niya na sinabi ng mama.
taking these drawings and numbering them, and then numbering your kind of taxonomy of joints, and people would understand how to build this. And I think that's also a thing here. You're not looking at a kind of exclusive architecture. You want this to be applied, and so I think there's a logic there.
Where?
Points doon si ate
Kind of
to.
the environmental design geek in me would kind
Corto
of,
precis.
especially not having experienced this culture personally, that the temperatures rather than the climate, would like to have kind of more climate data. Okay, just how hot and humid is it? And we can read from the architecture the need for the airflows and the shading, and putting some temperatures in terms of climate data and whatever moderation you get from the wind would be interesting. And then also potentially, you mentioned too, climate change. We're animals like any other animal, and tipping points, once things go over certain degrees, will impact upon us. So that's a kind of, but you show the kind of mechanisms and the flows, that's the key thing, and the architecture responds, really nicely to it, which I think is good.
Big.
It's interesting too, there's one point at the start in your introduction, I thought, this would be interesting, also from my perspective as someone who's moved from another culture, when you talk about how you would bring Norway into the project, how you've lived here, and then you kind of downplayed it in the end, which is maybe good because you're dealing with serious issues, and it's not a question of sort of identities. And we were talking. This is the only project outside of Norway this year, and this is so refreshing to have. I mean, it's good that the school is a very regional rooted school, but without these kind of inputs as well, there's a risk of being isolated. So I think this has a really important role in the body of work.
International.
Woohoo!
I mean, one just in terms of Norway was raised but didn't come in directly as a protagonist or as a player. I kind of, maybe it's different for you for me, but I kind of maybe think when you move cultures, being in Norway helps you understand your own culture so much better than you did when you lived there in a way, and maybe that's what it is. You talked a lot about also the Norwegian minimalism and the process. I don't know much about architectural practice in the Philippines, but I can see maybe there's a kind of clarity in the process too, and simplicity which is there. But I like that you haven't sort of, you take cultural heritage and identity seriously, and you haven't sort of, it's not about identity politics, it's about serious issues, climate change and adaptation.
Yes.
So I really enjoyed this as a kind of
1 point na naman si ate ta
serious
doon.
architecture addressing, big serious issues. And the things about the house being movable, things like that. I mean, there were small things too. I was kind of thinking the stainless steel, galvanized steel work technically, but maybe you're also addressing middle class housing. Maybe this is a kind of pragmatic compromise to sort of, but it's a small
Hindi ko
detail.
masyado naintindihan yung dun sinabi
You
yung
can
dalawa.
see this could be interpreted in different classes of cost and ways of doing it.
Industrial.
The main thing I take from it is the kind of, this is a kind of almost a critical regionalism where it's not
Materials used.
regionalism as identity, but it's responding to real regional issues, climate, culture, temperatures, and the seriousness of having to move your house. One question I had for you, which was,
Ay,
you didn't mention this much here, but in your book, you reference various NGOs and the government department. I was curious, is there a link or is there a next chapter?
The organizations. I tried to look upon some organizations that were tackling housing challenges in the Philippines that could potentially be interested into reading this book and looking into the more traditional ways. So the two organizations was mainly for housing projects, and the DNR Department of Natural Resources was they focuses mostly on what are the materials that are naturally available in the Philippines. So they have a list of that as well that could also be useful and for this project, and also maybe they could be also interested in reading this book. So I kind of just tried to find organizations in the Philippines as well to like
Target.
who am I giving this book for? Who am I producing this book for? So those organizations was mainly for that.
No, it would be nice for you to somehow, now the book's finished, I mean, this is the classic kind of the craft of writing, to think about your target audience, and then when it's finished, potentially take it further with them. Well, thank you very much.
Uy,
I'm very impressed by
Wash.
both the seriousness and the sort of professional. It's like a lecture for me. I'm just listening and I'm trusting you
yeah, that's
I
all.
I think it's super interesting, this double. It's both, or the way I see it, both the kind of archive. You sort of. I enjoyed your drawings very much as a way of kind of investigating these local techniques and the cuts and that part is both the
Good sineryoso na ito. May investigation pa siya.
looking backwards and
Detective
documenting.
ate ko to.
But at the same time, it's a kind of a recipe for building, which is a very nice double feature. I was thinking that because you could, you could take some of your drawings because they're so prescriptive and build this thing without an architect, without a middle person, just you could do it. And so I just thought that was super fascinating, this double kind of archive and
DIY daw.
prototype
Kakalito
in
yun.
one. Very nice, and I think definitely you have to publish this and show
Oh
it
my god.
to the right.
Spread the word! Oh my god!
Galing talaga niya itong bosetin to.
We've seen a lot of great design yesterday and today, and you have to see, interesting pieces of design. But your work really stands out from the point of view of research because not that many other projects have that kind of depth of what I would not hesitate to call historical research. And of course, it's not architecture. Maybe with known authors is what we could call vernacular architecture, but I think very often the term vernacular is used actually as something is slightly dismissive. I think on the contrary it should be seen as something is incredibly positive because it's embedded in the culture really of a specific place, and I loved all of that. I mean, wearing myself, these two hats of, on the one hand historian, on the other designer, I was maybe a bit thirsty actually to see more of the kind of work actually that you bring us today, and also to peek a little bit actually beyond Norway. So I think it's been incredibly engaging. I think when it gets to the project, there's a few, on the one hand, design questions, but also strategic questions, right? Design questions, I don't have really questions. It's more like things that actually appreciated. The way you try to translate the way in which the grid works in your prototype, very interesting. So the idea of working on the frame building, what in French we call the charpente, and there's no actually the skeleton maybe somehow of the building, and to try to reinterpret it, I think it's very interesting. So the grid becomes actually the basis for this flexibility for your building. That's absolutely great. The fact that you studied the joints, so the fact that your project is more of a manual or a handbook for the user to then interpret than necessarily a top-down design where you control everything. I think this is absolutely the way forward. Maybe not for all architectural projects, but for a significant, part of what we will do in the future. I think it would be really great to be able to re-empower, at least to a certain degree, the users, the end users actually to make interventions and possibly even to self-build. And of course, in your case, this is instrumental to lowering the price actually of these houses. They have to be self-built. And I think it's really brave actually to say, okay, I'm going to actually give up my authorship up to a certain degree to really put forward something that can be helpful and useful. That I thought, to me, really checks the boxes. It's creative, it's intelligent, it's relevant for what it is today.
Intelligent, relevant, ayos.
It's with the question of affordability.
Daming points
It's
yan
not talking about affordability of the building, but a lot of what you're showing us in terms of the other types that you are rightly criticizing at the beginning has to do with the cost of land at the end. So I think if you take this project further, where I would be really curious to see it going is to look beyond the pixel. So So to say, okay, now we have a great technique to build this new adapted Baha'i. And of course, it's a new adapted Baha'i that uses actually this concept of community bond or Bayanihan. I think that's fantastic because it really mobilizes something that is there, culturally, socially, in the way people relate to each other. But then I get really curious about, okay, if I am building my own, she's building her own, and he's building his own, and we are all neighbors, possibly even cousins, or maybe there's a kinship relationship. How are we going to position them? Are they going to be very close together? Are they going to be far apart? Which are the areas closer or not so close, in fact, actually to the city where you could implement that? And I have to admit, I know very little about actually the Philippines. I've never done a project actually in that context, but I've seen quite a lot of projects in a relatively similar environmental condition, not cultural, but environmental condition, in Malaysia and Singapore, where you have similar lifted houses. But the thing is that the Malay kampung, because most Malay people are actually are Muslim, then it's organized usually around a mosque or a prayer space. So what is interesting about the kampung is that you don't have a kind of orientation related to the sun or to the wind, but they are all related to the central spot, right? I have no idea what that would be in the Philippines, where most people, I would assume, are probably Christian, right? So they will have a different way of relating to each other and to the community. Does it mean that then we can expect a grid to emerge? Will it be related to the structure of the fields? And I know that we are out of time, but I would leave that question there. Next step, to think, how more of these can come together and how that can reflect culturally the needs actually and the ambitions of the people who live there, because that's a book that I would completely buy it 100%.
Yeah, the next book, the open version.
Oy, excited si Manong! My God, galing talaga ni Sexy! No!
Sexy na naman yan.
Inspiring, or I would say empowering
Ano to?
work.
Patayin ka
We have
naman.
a short